You're listening to Ricky and Jimmy on Relationships, the show where we uncover the thoughts and behaviors that are sabotaging your relationship and what you can do about it. Jimmy and I are passionate about sharing the ways that imperfect partners like you and I can shift unhealthy relational dynamics and create closeness. So welcome. Drop your defenses and open your heart, eyes, and ears. Let's learn how to be the best partner we can be together.
Ricky, I'm so glad that you're here with me today.
I'm always glad to be here.
We've
got a big one today.
We have a big one. This is actually episode 7, if I'm doing my math correctly.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
We have a pretty interesting episode today. I wanted to talk to you. So I've been on a weird narcissism kick lately. I've been getting a lot of messages from people. I did make a video on kind of how destructive narcissistic behaviors can be in relationships, and it got a lot of attention, and probably made some mistakes in my communication. So I tried to learn a little bit more about it, and I wanted to kind of just hash some stuff out with you.
Yeah, it can be a kind of a controversial topic, for sure.
Yeah, very much so. There's a lot of pain and emotion behind narcissism, and a lot of people have been affected by their partner's narcissistic behaviors. And we just want to say quickly right off the bat that we can all be capable of some narcissistic behaviors. So
absolutely. The literature talks about narcissism as a spectrum or a continuum too, not just this person's a narcissist and this one's not. All of us to some degree have certain levels of narcissism in our personalities.
Yeah, but I think that it would be great to have some sort of guidelines, or at least for us to be bringing attention to how destructive narcissistic behaviors can be when in ourselves, and watching out for that in our relationships, and kind of what to do if we start to see these red flags, because oftentimes it can be very hard to spot those red flags in the beginning. Not necessarily that they're not there, but maybe depending on our own trauma and
and this could be behavior that we've let happen over the years, and now that Jimmy and I will be helping call your attention to it, we mean red flag as in stop the situation. This behavior is not okay. Let's find a different way to interact. Not red flag as in throw your partner out the window. They're trash. That's not what we mean. Right.
Obviously, for a lot of this, it's going to be something that we need to sit down and have a talk with them about. Now, when it comes to abuse, we will talk about some emotional abuse. You know, if there's physical abuse involved, obviously we don't want you to. Yeah, that's a full stop. That's get safe, get to a professional where they can help you navigate that situation. But so let's just jump in. When it comes to, I read a good quote from Jillian Turecki the other day.
Oh, she's great.
She's so great. If you're not following Jillian Turecki, we've already mentioned her a couple times, but
that's right.
She said something along the lines of, the red flags that you ignore in the beginning will be the reason that you're unhappy in the relationship, and it will be the reason the relationship ends.
That's, oh man. And looking back in my own life, I can say for sure. She nailed that.
Yeah. We definitely don't. I get a lot of comments that say, in the beginning, there weren't that many red flags. They kind of lulled me in. And I totally understand that, because there is, I know what that feels like, to just get lulled in to a false sense of security with a partner. And then whether they're a narcissist or not, or they're just a selfish person.
We're on our best behavior at the beginning of relationships too. Exactly. I know that even myself, I am not who I am in the first 3 months of a relationship. I'm like perfect Ricky who cooks and cleans, and then after a while, when things get more comfortable, everybody gets a little sloppy. And I guess that would lead someone to think, man, I've been duped. This isn't the person that I met. So let's later on in the episode, let's talk about that sloppiness too, that I think we're all kind of guilty
gosh, that's so true.
Could make our partners think that we're leaning toward narcissistic tendencies.
And you would agree, even if we had somebody that they were like, no, my ex was a narcissist, or my current partner's a narcissist. we're not trying to invalidate you. No. They might be a narcissist, but the point, I think we're missing the point when we want to label our partner as a narcissist. What we're really saying is, I feel neglected in this relationship. Yes. I don't feel like there's any emotional safety. I can't trust my partner. I think that it's smarter to get down to the root problems rather than,
I agree.
Well, my partner's a narcissist. Yeah. Because like Ricky said, true narcissism is a personality disorder. And I believe Ricky would agree. If you are, in fact, in a relationship with a narcissist, they are not capable of love or selflessness. They're not actually capable of anything that would create a safe environment for a relationship. So they're not capable of relationships. Right. And that doesn't mean that we're calling you silly for being involved with one. We're just reminding you that if you're going to call your partner a narcissist, you're also saying that's a big claim, because you're essentially saying they're not capable of being in a relationship with anyone, and yet I'm in a relationship with them. So
exactly. But there's a lot of hope there too. Yeah. Because if you're not in a relationship with a diagnosable narcissist, it means there's a lot that we can do with our own boundaries and with that person's own efforts to overcome their narcissistic behavior. Yeah. So that's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just hit you with some red flags just in general.
Okay.
And we can go into whatever we want, but
okay.
So if you're in a relationship, one thing that is a huge red flag is the way that you communicate. I think if you're, let's say you're in a new relationship, these are like red flags in the beginning stages of a relationship for me, like that we should be watching out for, or that we would agree, we were missing out on that in the beginning, and that did cause some harm. I would say a lack of deep, honest, vulnerable communication. A lot of people don't have that ability, and I think that's
surface level. Yeah.
Surface level.
Yeah.
I think we don't realize how valuable that type of communication is. Someone that can actually talk about their wants and needs and desires. That is a huge green flag if they can do that. And I think that that's one red flag. I'm not saying just because there's a red flag that means that there's something massively wrong in the relationship. I'm just saying, like, that can cause problems if there's no actual depth to your communication.
Yeah, it's a red flag, like, stop and pay attention to this and look into it because it warrants further investigation.
Yeah, and when it comes to anxious and avoidant attachment, as you know, they both struggle with being vulnerable. So this isn't,
Yeah. Oh, no, that's an insecure attacher thing. Vulnerability is really hard for people who don't feel like their true selves are acceptable. So, if somebody sticks with the surface level conversation and never gets into any depth or meaty stuff about themselves, that's a red flag, meaning stop and let's investigate that more.
Yeah. And bringing it back to narcissistic behaviors, that would look like always having to be the center of attention. And that's something
in a surface level way, you mean? Like,
well, yeah, clearly if you asked them about, do you feel like you're always having to be the center of attention? They wouldn't understand how to navigate through that. They would just blow that off as, well, why wouldn't I be the center of attention?
Why wouldn't I be? I'm amazing.
I'm amazing. So let's talk about a red flag of controlling behavior, because this is something, regardless of whether your partner has, you would want to label them as whatever.
Yeah.
Lots of different partners can be controlling, and that's a huge red flag.
I honestly struggle with control in a lot of aspects of my relationship too.
Yeah.
That's where I'm on a little further on the continuum than some people. From a less secure partner's standpoint, it can be hard to let go of control. So sometimes we find safety in trying to control other people, even though it's really unhealthy.
That's so true. So when I think of control, I think of like possessiveness, someone following you, someone wanting to take away from your time spent with your friends or family. So if you're feeling like your partner is kind of isolating you, that's a red flag, in my opinion.
And I like how you've given us like a more extreme version of control. I don't struggle with those things, just to be clear. Right. But on the lesser end, like the ability to not have my partner reading a self-help book and just let him read some science fiction or whatever. Like, that's hard for me to say, you enjoy yourself and have a relaxing evening instead of more work on our relationship.
And we do talk, and sometimes we do talk about how anxious attachers can be, they don't realize that they're actually being manipulative.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my problem. Okay, let's keep going with the other.
All right.
With more red flags.
here's a big red flag. Lying. Whether
that's a huge red flag.
Yeah. Whether it's little lies or big lies, those are huge issues. So, and a lot of times we get kind of gaslight ourselves where we're like, well, it was just a little lie, or like maybe they didn't know. But like, if you're seeing a pattern of lying, that is a massive red flag that we should pay attention to.
That's a stop and investigate that further.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really do any good to ask the person like, I noticed you've been lying a lot. What do you say about that?
What say you?
Yeah, but it definitely warrants further investigation. Like, I need to stop and maybe be honest with myself about, is this person not a super truthful person, and what do I want to do with that information?
Yeah, that's huge. The next one I thought of was not taking any accountability. We love accountability on this channel. We are huge on that. And if you're with someone,
junkies.
And when it comes to lots of people, myself included, in the past, truly, a lot of us could say we struggle with accountability. I mean, it's very difficult to just own your stuff,
It is, isn't it?
It's so hard. So, but that's something that's a red flag in ourselves. And if you're seeing it in your partner where they're just continually blame shifting, they're continually the victim. There's no, there's no accountability. There's no self-reflection there. They refuse to, take any constructive feedback. Those are huge red flags.
Yeah. At the far end of the narcissistic behavior continuum, I would say that somebody would probably hardly ever be able to take accountability for the ways that they've hurt someone in a relationship. And that's
not at all.
hard to be on the receiving end of, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. The next one I have is inconsistency. So when I think about that, I think of like, especially when it comes to narcissism, there's a lot of love bombing, and
they're very close, and then they're very gone.
Yes, and not just narcissism, or not just narcissistic behaviors, but other people do that too. That have commitment issues. When they want to be close to you, they're close to you, but then when they feel like, oh, I'm getting too close, I don't want so much commitment in this relationship or this situationship, so I'm going to pull away now. That inconsistency is a problem.
Yeah, that can be a tough trait too. I think a lot of times we assign intention where that doesn't happen, right? Like, if you see somebody who's telling you that you're super wonderful and then they completely disappear, it can be so easy to say, they did that to me on purpose. They reeled me in and then they discarded me like a piece of trash. When a lot of the times that's a commitment phobic person who's terrified. Oh, for sure. Or someone who hasn't learned to face difficult conversations. So absolutely.
Or they could be avoidant attached. I mean, we
absolutely. And it doesn't mean that the behavior hurts any less. It hurts a lot, and it's dehumanizing and awful. But we do have to be careful about assigning intent where there's not.
That's so true. And that just brings me back to if you're in a situationship, there's an aspect where you have to stand up for what you want in this. If you don't want to be in a situationship, then don't be in a situationship.
So hard to do.
And that's so hard, because I'm sure you're like, but how am I supposed to do that? Well, that all goes back to how we view ourselves. Like you are worthy of consistency and reciprocation. Like you're worthy of that. So like, if you're not getting it, then we can be sad that this person doesn't want to put in the effort to be consistent with us, but we can't stay in relationships that we know they're not giving me what I deserve.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
I've found it helpful to remind myself that sometimes people are really wonderful human beings and still a very poor fit for me. And so that helps to say to yourself, because sometimes you'll see somebody and you'll think that they're wonderful, and that means that they're wonderful with you, but it doesn't mean that at all. So
no.
Anyway,
No, it doesn't.
Moving along.
The next thing I have on my list is boundaries. If your partner, now I had no idea what boundaries were when I was in the meat of my relationship.
Yeah.
But here's what I know. If two people love each other and they actually know what love is, you will want to know what that person views as not okay and what they view as kosher. So if you don't feel like your partner cares about how you feel valued and loved, then they don't respect your boundaries. And especially if you tell them, hey, so I didn't like that. That made me feel hurt. That made me feel disrespected, or that made me feel neglected. And they continue to do it, then they do not respect your boundaries and they do not respect you. That's a red flag. It doesn't mean that they're a terrible person, but it does mean that this relationship is going to be very difficult, because
I'm glad that you added that too, that it doesn't make them a terrible person. It's a relationship issue that absolutely must be addressed. I know that for me personally, it's very difficult for me to hear my partner say, you have done something that hurt me. There's so much shame that just floods me when I hear that. And I care deeply about his expressing that, but man, it can be hard to change my behavior sometimes. Sometimes please do.
Oh no, I talk a lot about, especially I get onto men a lot, and I say when your partner says that they're hurt, the first thing you need to do is listen, try to empathize, be curious, try to understand their feelings, all that stuff. But when it happens to me, the first thing that goes through my head is, no, you just don't understand. You just don't understand. Exactly. But I don't say that. That's the first thing that goes through my head is like, oh no. If you only understood what I meant, let me explain what I meant real quick, and then you won't feel that way. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so invalidating. Like that's me doing the thing that I tell people not to do. So so then I have to refocus and say like, tell me more about how that made you feel. Or I love that.
It sounds like both of us struggle with one of Gottman's Four Horsemen.
So
defensiveness.
True,
yes. Yeah, it's my worst one for sure.
Yeah. Since we brought up Gottman, we if we don't get to them directly, those are all red flags. Defensiveness, criticism,
excellent,
contempt, and stonewalling.
Are they? How do they relate to narcissistic behavior, or do they?
They do. So when it comes to narcissistic behavior, contempt is going to be a huge red flag when it comes to narcissistic behavior, because criticism is attacking someone's character. It's not good.
Yeah.
It's like, you're lazy. You're so lazy. You meant to do that. You're so neglectful. It's not, I feel hurt because of a behavior. It's you're so neglectful. Like I'm labeling you are neglectful. I'm attacking your entire character.
Totally. And it places that person below the attacker.
Exactly. Contempt takes it an even step further, where now you are belittling this person. You're making fun of them. You're so stupid. Like, how could you even do this? You're a moron. Like, why would anyone love you? Why would anyone? And when you think of narcissism, that's textbook narcissism, because I have to put you lower than me. I am superior to you. Now, superiority is obviously one that we'll talk about when it comes to narcissism, because with that inflated sense of self, that's a huge key as well. So, anyways, back to boundaries. That's. Oh,
sure. I know we are off on a bit of a tangent.
No,
there.
I loved that tangent. Your partner should care about what you will and will not tolerate in a relationship. Even though that's a hard conversation to have, it's a necessary conversation, and that's kind of what love. That's kind of what love does.
Yeah, it's part of it for sure. I
feel like I'm talking too much, so I'm going to let you talk. The next one, I know you love this, so I'm going to bring you in.
Okay.
I think a red flag, just, it doesn't really pertain to narcissism per se, but just an overall negative attitude or ingrateful attitude.
Oh, that's rough, because I have to say I kind of tend to be drawn to those people. I know that sounds weird. But I know what you mean.
I'm a saver. I want to save you, rescue
and I'm also
you.
kind of a sunny, positive person, and so I think that's kind of my yin and yang. Is people who are a little bit more gloomy are kind of my people. So, but it can be tough. It can be tough. I would think someone with more narcissistic tendencies might be more inclined to complain a lot and make themselves and their misery the center of attention. Mm-hmm.
I wrote down how important it is to have a culture of appreciation and admiration. And
always.
I know you love that. Mm-hmm. But if you're consistently negative or have an attitude of ungratefulness, I don't see a lot of appreciation and admiration in your communication and in your attitude. And that is essential for your relationship to thrive, according to the research.
Totally. I want to say too, that as far as admiration goes, as long as we're talking about narcissistic behavior, there's a lot of buzz online about how narcissists need excessive amounts of admiration. And if you're in a relationship where the only thing that happens is you're praising them and they're soaking it up and they're never giving you any praise or appreciation, that's a red flag as well. And if you're listening to this, you deserve praise and appreciation as well.
I love that. Yeah. The next one is pretty heavy. Narcissism is going to come with some textbook emotional abuse. So we talked about contempt. We talked about a belittling attitude. We talked about gaslighting. For anybody that needs a refresher on gaslighting, that's where I challenge your reality. You say I said something. I say I didn't say that. That didn't happen that way. I don't argue with how you're. I don't talk about how you're feeling. I argue. See, if I argue the facts, if you say something and I can just say, nope, that didn't happen like that, or I didn't say that, or you're just being crazy, then I don't ever have to take any accountability. I can just argue. I can argue, if you think about it, if it's my word against yours, we can just go round and round forever. I can always argue, no, that didn't happen.
She said.
Unless you have a recording of me, I can just always say it didn't happen that way. And that, from what I hear from people that are victims of narcissistic abuse, that gaslighting drives you insane, because you start to believe maybe they're right. Maybe I am the crazy one. And that is so tragic, because we don't ever want you thinking that you're the crazy one. If someone's calling you crazy, there's a strong chance, there's like a 99.9% chance you are not crazy.
Yeah, I would say that. And I'm someone who's been called crazy a lot in previous relationships. And I have to say, well, I look back on my behavior and it was highly emotional. It was never for no reason at all. You know what I mean? There was never a time where I just flew off the handle and nothing had happened to make me feel like that. So I think that's what you're trying to tell people, right? Like when someone just says you're making a big deal out of absolutely nothing, chances are it's probably something. It probably is something. Nobody, hardly anyone.
I don't advise anyone to say you're making a big deal out of nothing. I mean, that's just not a nice thing to say to anyone.
It's really not.
So I would say that's a red flag in itself. If somebody, that goes along with invalidation. If you feel like somebody's consistently invalidating your perspective, whereas like that essentially to me means I'm not allowed to have a valid perspective. If I say that your behavior hurt me and you say, well, you shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
That's invalidation. I'm not allowed to feel hurt because you have deemed that you are the judge. And that's also textbook narcissistic behavior or selfish behavior, where it's like, I'm the judge of what you should be able to feel, you know?
Yeah. Oh, and that's hard to hear. And it's hard to slowly start to believe that stuff too. I've been in that position and it's not fun.
Yeah. And can we go back real quick to if we dig down deep into all of this, because when I made my video on narcissism and trying to fight against it, my main point was the tragic news in all this, or the tragic thing in all of this, is that so often we attract these type of partners because of our past trauma. There's you probably read the book Getting the Love You Want. I think it was like
I love that one. Harville Hendrix.
Harville Hendrix.
It's wonderful.
And I remember he said something, that was one of the first books I read on relationship advice.
Yeah.
And he said something that like blew my mind, where he was talking about if you have a traumatic childhood, if you have parents who were overly critical or emotionally neglectful or invalidating, or they made you feel like a burden, there's a subconscious part of you, well, one, that never truly matures and develops because you don't know what love is actually supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
But also, he said that what's the craziest thing is that you will go out looking for a partner that matches your caregiver.
Yeah.
Because
that familiarity feels kind of safe.
Big time. And he said that another problem with that is that you subconsciously want that relationship to work so that you can heal from your past relationship.
Yeah. Boy,
so that's one of the reasons.
I feel that when you say
yes. And that's one of the reasons that you will fight so hard for that relationship, which is, for anyone looking on the outside, it's toxic and destructive, but you're fighting so hard for it to work because you almost want it to work so badly. But in his research, he would say the reason you want it to work so badly is because you're trying to heal from that previous relationship.
I'm trying to save little Ricky when I'm finding somebody and I want to turn them into someone who can love me. Yeah, there's a reason that fight is so tough because I have to save little Ricky because that'll make everything okay again.
Yep.
Yeah, that's tough. And I used to, not to interrupt there, I used to tell people that I had a really high tolerance for bad behavior in relationships.
Yes.
And they would be so sad when I told them that. But I was like, well, I'm not sad about it. I think it's great because then the really damaged people, there's someone who will love them. But looking back now, I'm like, if I could choose for myself, do I want to have a high tolerance for someone treating me badly? I do not. No. I didn't know that back then, but now I know that having a high tolerance that is not a good thing.
And a lot of people do not know that they have that high tolerance. They don't know.
Yeah, no. I didn't. I thought it was normal. I thought the level of, I don't want to say abuse, but the level of bad behavior that I tolerated, I thought was completely normal. And it wasn't until I found some good relationship role models who I saw were doing things differently and kindly that I was like, okay, that's the tolerance that I want. I want to be able to throw red flags when someone makes a condescending comment to me.
Yeah.
And say, hey, we're going to stop and examine that right now. We're not going to brush over it.
I think that's just extremely important to reemphasize that you sacrificing yourself is love, but not when it comes at the expense of your needs.
Yeah. Well said.
If you're being chronically taken for granted, that's not love.
Right,
that's
because
not love.
Who's loving you? You have to be loved in the relationship too.
And you know what? We touch on the fact that it's so hard to see where that is. Like, well, how do I know? Here's how you know. Here's how you know. Your body always knows. If you feel like there's resentment growing inside of you, if there's bitterness, resentment, you know when you're being taken for granted. You're complaining to your friends and family. Your threshold for poor behavior might be too high. And there's reasons for that. We're not condemning you. We're not trying to, there's reasons for that. But unfortunately, the only way forward is to say, oh yeah, I am doing that. And I'm worth more than that. I'm more valuable than someone taking advantage of me.
And it's obviously not a light switch that you can flick.
No.
But that point where you recognize that is where you start seeking out tools to help you overcome that kind of behavior and thinking.
And that's so important because from what I've seen, you can't have a healthy relationship without self-worth, like understanding what you deserve, understanding your value as a person, understanding what hurtful behavior is and what you can't tolerate. Because there's always, here's what's fascinating about narcissistic relationships. In every narcissistic relationship, there's always control and manipulation on one side and low self-worth and shame on the other side.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. Let's kind of transition into that then. That hierarchy and control is actually something that we can do a lot about. Because I would assume that the people listening to this feel like they're on that one downside and that their partner or the person that they're pursuing or chasing is trying to have more control in the relationship and they're in that one man up position. or woman. So let's, if we can, talk about some boundaries that we can set that kind of level out that power dynamic a little bit and even
Absolutely.
the playing field. Because if you're with somebody who displays some narcissistic behavior, you can shift the power dynamic of the relationship to something a little bit healthier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
can I start on the first one?
Please do. I have some bullet points, but I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Well, the first one's the easiest one.
Okay.
It's boundaries around when you get into a conflict around disrespect. So that's the easiest
I love
one.
that.
Anytime
you say that, but I struggle with that one a lot.
I'm not saying it's the easiest one to demonstrate. I'm saying it's the easiest one to like when somebody talks about boundaries, I'm always like, I wonder what they're going to talk about. You'll hear this over and over when anybody mentions like, well, what is a boundary?
Yeah.
They always go back to when you're in a conflict and someone is disrespectful towards you, and we can argue what's disrespectful. If you feel disrespected, that's all that matters. So if you're in a conflict and someone says something, or let's say they name call. Classic narcissism. They love to name call. They love to belittle. They love to bring you down a peg.
Sure.
Let's say they launch into some name calling. The moment that somebody calls you a name, you have the power to leave that conversation. You do not have to stay and fight. A boundary is, I'm not going to allow somebody to sit here and belittle me. So you stop the conversation. Hey, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to leave until we can come back and we can have a normal discussion, but I'm not going to allow you to call me stupid. I'm not going to allow you to call me names. That's a boundary. I'm not controlling whether or not you can continue speaking to me. I'm controlling the things that I can control, which is my physical presence being belittled.
Absolutely.
That is in my control. So that's what a boundary is. I get this a lot. I don't mean to derail you. I get this question. I get this comment a lot, and it really bugs me because they say boundaries don't work on narcissists.
Right.
And I'm like, whoa. No. Your boundaries are for you.
Right.
The boundaries are not you controlling them. Boundaries is you controlling what you can control. So
because truly, boundaries don't work on anybody. We're not using boundaries to control other people's behavior at all. So let's think about our boundaries as ways that we control what we're exposed to. And I wanted to add to what you said. If you're struggling with self-worth, and I'm someone who's really struggled with self-worth in my past, it was tough for me to identify when I'd been disrespected. Doesn't that sound sad? I had trouble identifying it.
That.
Yeah, and I absolutely had trouble speaking up against it. I almost didn't feel like I deserved to say, "Hey, wait a second, you can't say that to me." So if that sounds like a mountain that's really tough to overcome, you are not alone. That's a tough one to get going on.
Especially, I don't want to interrupt you, but especially when you, like Ricky said, a lot of us that are sensitive, in touch with our emotions, we tend to, not always, but we tend to get with partners who are a little bit less sensitive, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yeah.
Yes, we do.
No names, not naming any names, but yes,
names.
The less sensitive people tend to be drawn to me. Yes.
And what happens when you finally stand up for yourself and you say, hey, what you said was disrespectful to the less sensitive?
It's jarring for them, and they don't want to.
They do not want to
believe it and face it. Yeah.
And they're prone to invalidating, and even if we're just talking about somebody who's, they're not a narcissist, lots of people are prone to just not handling that situation well.
No, tons.
So for the people pleaser and for the one who's very sensitive, not only is it extremely difficult to get the courage to say, hey, I feel disrespected because of what you just said. That takes tremendous courage in itself. But then when you get punished, for that vulnerability, that's where relationships die. And that's where So
and we are begging you to please push through. If you've gained the courage, if you've summoned the courage to say, hey, that's name calling, and I can't allow myself to be around that. And there's pushback, which there might be. That's the part where you dig in and you stand up for yourself, even if you're being punished for standing up for yourself.
Yep.
Man, that's hard to hear, because we don't want to. Yeah, please do.
I'm sorry.
We're both fired up on this. I know we are.
I want to tell I don't know who's actually still listening. Frank is probably still here. For the people that are still listening, that see me as someone who, well, Jimmy has emotional intelligence. He's like, his wife must be, they must have a good relationship. Mm-hmm. I want to tell you the moment, what's it called? Like the turning moment. What's that moment called? Anyways, the turning point.
Yeah.
The turning point in all of this, in all of my emotional awareness journey, was when Emily set a boundary. When she said, around disrespect, she said, for the first time ever, she said, I am not going to let you talk to me like that.
Wow.
That was the moment it was seared in my head. I will remember it forever. That was the moment, because I stopped and I was like, how could she say that to me? Like, how, I was thinking like
you had no idea that you were disrespecting her in that way.
We were just having a normal fight. Lots of couples have fights. So when you finally say, I'm not going to fight with you anymore, and you can't, I'm not going to let you talk to me like that. That is extremely courageous, and I applaud her for doing that. And that was the turning point for me to really see, like, oh, there are some things I need to work on. Yeah. Anyways,
can I lighten the mood a little with my own addition to this?
But I just want to make my final point.
Okay, please do.
My final point is that great things can come from that.
Yes.
You're looking at something that, like, I took that, and it's the man I am today is because someone set a boundary and said, you can't talk to me like that. That's what I'm saying.
This is the exact place that I'm going with this too. This is a lighten the mood kind of thing. I, in the beginning of my current relationship, was not someone who would set any boundary. I would hear disrespect, because it happens in fights with people who aren't skilled at fighting with each other. I would hear disrespect, and I would just let it fly right past me. And I always thought, like, maybe he doesn't notice but he did. He noticed that Ricky doesn't stand up for herself, and what's up with that? And I remember when I'd been doing reading, my favorite book on the topic is the Better Boundaries Workbook by Sharon Martin. And if you need to pause this and Google it, go get that book right now. It's wonderful. I'd been working through that one, and I remember when I said, hey, I'm going to stop you right there. That feels like a personal attack, and I don't think I deserve that. And when I set that boundary, he stopped and he was like, that's the sexiest thing I've ever seen. Wow. And I was like, it was so encouraging. Sometimes we don't get invalidated for saying that. Sometimes our partner's like, there you go. That's what I need to hear. Like, he didn't realize that he'd been doing anything terribly wrong, but he was like, wow, like, thank you for shaking me out of that, because I don't want to talk to you like that. Also, you are smoking hot right now.
I'll tell you, there is something very attractive about somebody who knows what they want, what they won't tolerate, and has self-worth. I'm not saying...
So sexy.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's attractive. That's an attractive trait. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say real quick on I should have said this in the very beginning. So Frank, I should have said this about narcissism.
He's not paying attention. It's fine. This is for everyone else.
He's sleeping. Okay. When it comes to narcissism, obviously there's negative connotation around it, as there should be. I'm perfectly fine with that. But we have to remember, when it comes to really digging down to the root cause of all this, the reason that someone is a narcissist, or even if they're diagnosed as a narcissist, it's usually because of trauma in their past. And we have to remember, they are actually extremely insecure individuals that are overcompensating massively. That doesn't justify any of their hurt.
Not at all.
I'm just saying, let's remember that they are actually scared, insecure children inside of them. I love that.
Because this is the moment where we take my mom's famous shrink ray that I talk about on all the podcasts. And she said, when you're feeling a lot of anger towards somebody, take your shrink ray and shrink them into a child and ask, what happened to you? Because that's That's the root of anyone who's out there treating people awfully is a child who's been hurt badly.
It's true.
And like you said, it does not excuse the behavior at all, but it does kind of help us let go of some of the anger. It kind of turns them into less of a monster, and it gives us a little bit of empathy.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that I'm telling you that you have to stay with them either. Like,
no,
I'm just saying,
and it doesn't mean I'm going to let them say mean things to me at all.
No,
but it's also, I don't have to go to bed at night like simmering with hate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you touched on some really interesting points there. So let's get back to some red flags real quick.
Okay.
You can hit me with, did we go over your bullet points? I don't want to miss your bullet points.
No, we didn't. But do you have some more red flags? Because we can finish those up and then transition
to
the...
All right, here's a good red flag. No desire for growth, self-reflection, or emotional maturity.
Did you just feel the collective groan of the audience? I'm serious, because I hear it so much that people are like, my partner is not working on this stuff. And I'm like, that's hard, because we can't force people to do that. Correct. That's tough. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough one. But it's one that's going to come back and bite you in the end. If your partner never had that desire for growth and self-reflection and building intimacy with you or connection or trust with you in the beginning, and they still don't have it now, you're looking back in the beginning and thinking, wow, I wish that they would have done that, all those years ago. Or I wish I would have paid attention and realized that was going to be destructive now.
Yeah.
It's like sowing seeds, like if there's no seed, if they're not sowing any seeds in here, then nothing's going to grow here.
Sure.
And that's really sad.
Let me help inspire some of the people who are really depressed after hearing that.
Oh my gosh, I'm really sorry that this is such a depressing episode.
I know. They're like, Jimmy, why? My own partner was not working on anything relationship wise when I got with him. I got to say, one of the things that I loved about him was that he was definitely into self-improvement, but not from a relationship standpoint. So I guess those are some seeds that I saw. This is somebody who likes to work on himself, but it took him watching me working on myself and seeing the good things that were sprouting in my new behaviors for him to go, maybe there's something to all this relationship and emotional work, and maybe I want in on this because it looks kind of great. So there's hope. I know a lot of us are saying, I didn't get with somebody who was into this stuff. Is there no hope for them? There's hope. There's hope. Yeah, there's hope. And not that they should wait forever, but you did have to wait about a year or so before he started making movements in the right direction. Yeah, relationally. Yeah, and I chose to wait.
Correct. That was a choice.
That's another big point. Yeah.
Let me hit you with some more bad news. Okay.
This is the middle of the episode. We can get depressing. We'll just bring it back up later.
We're almost done. People clicked off a long time ago. So here's some red flags that I just want people to pay attention to. This is, like I said, this is kind of more geared towards the beginning of a relationship where you're getting your footing in the relationship. If you feel like your body is always on high alert, if you feel like it's just always fight or flight, if you feel scared to talk to them about certain issues, if you feel like you're walking on eggshells, those are all red flags. It all comes back to emotional safety. I want to add those can come from within as well. For me, in retrospect, I had partners who were not necessarily making it unsafe to speak my mind, but I had internal pressure that was telling me, don't speak your mind. So sometimes that comes from within also. If you're a people pleaser, you do not want to, you don't. No, it's terrifying. Yeah, it's terrifying. But that can come externally from your partner as well. Yeah. And that is if your partner is saying, I hate it when you bring this stuff up, which I'm sure a lot of us have heard. That's so much. Yeah, that's a red flag, meaning like, hey, actually, it's really important to me that we talk about this stuff. That's like a requirement for me being happy in a relationship. It's okay to say that. And that's extremely a powerful, when you get to the place where you can actually say that. I mean, not many people have said that out loud, what you just said right there.
Oh, no, see, sometimes I forget how hard this stuff is to say out loud.
It's so hard. It's so hard. But let me go back real quick to what you just said, and it kind of ties back into what I was saying about like walking on the eggshells. So many partners have heard when they do bring up a complaint or however they bring it up. Sometimes they bring it up in a healthy way, sometimes in a non-healthy way. But if your partner makes you out and labels you as too sensitive, too needy, too emotional, if they call you a burden, I just need you to know that we don't view you that way ever.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. I mean, I'm thanking you for them too, but I absolutely feel the same way too. I think Jimmy and I are both more sensitive types, and I'm sure both of us in our past relationships or even present relationships occasionally have been accused of being a little much with the emotions and the needs. And anybody listening to this, it's okay to have big emotions and big needs. And we don't view you as too needy. So
No, and oftentimes the person that's being called too needy is the exact person that suppresses their needs at the expense of meeting someone else's. So when they hear that, that's a double punch to the gut, because they're like, absolutely, I sacrifice everything for you, and and then you turn around and say that I'm too needy, or that I'm,
I remember thinking like, needy, I don't do anything for myself, right?
Exactly.
Like I don't ask for anything here. How am I, right?
Yep. That goes back to so many people I hear say, I've literally put the bar on the floor and you're still tripping over it. Yeah. So these are all kind of red flags that if you find yourself saying that, if you find yourself thinking that, if you find yourself complaining that they just take advantage of me. Like these are red flags, not necessarily saying that you're in a toxic relationship, but you might be. And like, these are things that you need to be paying very close attention to, because I always say that it takes two people doing the work to make this thing work. And the work is, selflessness and sacrifice and mutual respect and, healthy communication and building trust and intimacy. And if you're not doing those things, or if you have one partner that's not interested in doing those things, your relationship will always struggle, because it always requires two doing the work. So
I like how you put that, that your relationship will always struggle. Not necessarily that your relationship will always fail, but with only one person working, it is a lot of work for the one person. But let's lift the mood up a little bit and start.
I would love that.
Yeah, it's feeling really heavy, isn't it?
People are rejoicing.
Let's talk a little bit about what we can do. So we're sitting here, we're nodding, we're relating. I have recognized that I am in a relationship with somebody who's exhibiting some narcissistic behavior, and it's really bumming me out.
Or hopefully, I don't mean to interrupt you, but hopefully we're thinking, oh, I do some of that too.
Oh, yes. Hopefully you are thinking. I know I was thinking that when you were reading the bullets.
Sorry, go ahead.
Let's talk about some ways to set boundaries against narcissistic behavior, because there are a lot. They're not easy. I'm going to throw that out. It's not easy at first, and there probably will be pushback. But if you keep practicing these things, one, it could wake your partner up to the way that they're acting. That's what you experienced, Jimmy. Or two, it could wake your partner up to how strong and powerful you can be in the relationship. That's what happened in my partnership. So first, understand who and what you're dealing with. And that bullet point sounds a little bit scary, but don't be misled into thinking that standing up in a single instance is going to turn everything around and your partner will suddenly snap out of it. If somebody's deeply embroiled in narcissistic behavior, those are likely some pretty strong patterns that's going to take a while for them to overcome. So pushback does not necessarily mean that you've done something wrong or that it's not working. Know that this person is in a pattern of behavior, and it's going to take a while to get out of it.
And just like one caveat, if this pushback is in the form of aggressiveness or some sort of physical abuse, that's obviously a hard stop where we do not want you continuing in any sort of...
No, our entire podcast does not apply to abusive relationships. So if your relationship makes you fear for your safety, go ahead and turn us off and head over to, we should probably...
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, but there are abuse hotlines. I think Jimmy can drop it into the links. I
sure will.
Yeah, please do, because this would be a good spot for that.
If you feel like you're being abused in any sense of the term, we don't want you to come... We're not giving you 5 tips on helping you deal with this abuse.
No, we're not.
If you feel like you're being abused, that's a full stop right there, where I need to get safe.
Yes, and we want
talk
that
to
for
someone
you.
about this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you feel like you're not in any danger, then we can move on, and you want to stay in this relationship, then we can move on to the bullet points.
And here we go. Yeah, the next bullet point. Thanks for joining us. The second one says, don't allow yourself to be manipulated. Easier said than done, of course.
Absolutely.
But if you know that you feel a certain way, don't let somebody tell you that you don't. If you feel sensitive about something, don't let someone tell you that you're being too sensitive. Your feelings are your own. You get to decide how you feel about things. And even if it's hard for them to hear, you need to stand up for yourself and own your feelings and not let someone convince you out of them. Do you have something to add to that, Jimmy? Or
practice saying, I'm actually the judge of my feelings.
I know one time in an argument I said, that's not for you to decide. And they didn't like hearing that, but it's true. It was true though. It was like, I get to be the one who decides how I feel.
Believe it or not, my feelings aren't a part of this debate. We're not actually debating whether or not.
No. Okay. And we can laugh about that, but that's a really
huge.
ballsy, powerful thing to say in an argument or a conflict. Another bullet point here says, know your limits. And as somebody who really struggled with where my limits were, that was a tough one for me. I think therapy helped me a lot with that. A therapist helped me decide where my limits were. As someone who had a high tolerance for bad behavior, I needed a professional and my relationship role models to show me what were acceptable levels of this is not feeling okay and we can proceed, right?
Yep.
I didn't know where those lines were.
That's a classic problem of any sort of dysfunctional relationship. We don't know where the lines are. Yeah. We don't know. Yeah.
That's tough.
That's a boundary issue in itself.
It is. And therapy helped immensely with that for me. I know. Don't feel the need to defend yourself.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think that's another one that's easier said than done. But no is a complete sentence.
Oh my gosh.
That. And it is.
You could spot on.
Isn't that beautiful? I love that. I just love that. But it's true. If you are feeling like something's too much for you or something doesn't feel good for you to hear, you don't have to continue in the conversation. No, I'm not comfortable. You don't have to explain that away.
You do not owe them an explanation.
No. So that's a boundary. That's a good one to practice setting. Listen to your gut is on here. I personally hate that one because my gut lies to me all the time. But sometimes if we're feeling massive anxiety or we're not able to sleep or we find ourselves bringing something up in conversation to friends that we're like, oh, I'm talking about this again. Sometimes your gut has a lot of wisdom for you that you should listen to. That maybe something's bothering you more than you think it is.
Yep. Your relationship should not feel this chaotic. That is not what love feels like. That's not what safety feels like.
Yeah. Nope. Yeah. This bullet point, I want to get your opinion on this, Jimmy. It says
I love opinions.
Yeah, it says don't show them how their behavior affects you. I don't love that. But I want to see how you feel about that when you hear it. Don't let that person see how their behavior is affecting you. And I
don't know what their intent was on that question. I mean, I would obviously say the complete opposite. So I don't know.
I would too. I think they're trying to say that in the event that somebody is suffering from extreme narcissistic behavior, they're enjoying getting a rise out of someone.
Yes.
But in a loving relationship, I kind of think it's vital that somebody sees how their behavior affects you.
And they should care.
Absolutely, they should care. So maybe an extra caveat here is to be careful about the information that you see online, because it might apply more to diagnosable narcissists and not so much loving relationships, right?
And if you are with a narcissist, or if you were in a relationship with a diagnosable narcissist, which we already said is full stop. Anyways,
yeah.
But if you were, that would be a good point where they are going to use any information against you to knock you down a peg or punish your vulnerability. So obviously we wouldn't want to give that person any ammunition.
Right. I think on the old interwebs they call that gray rocking. Have you heard that term?
I have been researching that. Yeah.
Yeah. Really, and I definitely, if somebody is kind of pushing your buttons just to see how you react, I would advise for a little gray rocking. Try to make yourself calm and don't give in to their taunts. But in the context of a loving relationship, I think it's a great idea to say, hey, what you said really hurt me, because someone who loves you will care about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just made a video about that. If you're actually in a narcissistic relationship, they're baiting you into a fight because they want you to lose your cool, because then they can come back and call you crazy. Remember how you lost your cool just a second ago?
Yeah.
You're so crazy. Yeah. But they baited you into a fight that whole time. Because it's manipulation. They're trying to manipulate and control you. Not to mention the fact that if they can get you to fight, if they can get such a rise out of you, they know exactly what buttons to push. So then they get this massive rise out of you, and it gives them a sense of, look at how important I am. Look at how I can control this person. So if you feel like that's ever happened to you, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, it is. And I always have to throw a little something about attachment in, but I want to throw this out. So anxious hearts, bear with me, because this is not going to be easy for you to hear. One aspect of anxious attachment is we tend to be more demonstrably emotional. You can see our emotions. And for us, it's very hard when we can't see or feel our partner's emotions. So one tendency of the anxiously attached is to try to poke the bear and goad our partner into emotional reaction. Because for us, it feels like, yes, now I can tell that they care. Does that make us narcissists? It does not. But it is a narcissistic behavior, and it is manipulative. So don't poke the bear. Please don't. And if your partner is trying to poke you, yes, a little gray rocking. And then maybe when things are calm, let them know, hey, when you were trying to throw things out that upset me in order to get a big reaction, that breaks my heart. I don't want us to be interacting like that.
And if they don't care that it broke your heart, that's a red flag that you should.
That's a big red flag.
Yeah, obviously. One of the last red flags I wanted to mention is moving too fast in the relationship. Going back to anxious attachment, or just people who have had trauma in their past, they fall in love real quick. And we talked in a previous episode about the stages of relationship and how it's vital that we don't skip steps and that we don't move too quickly through the steps. And I don't know about you, but I have a bad habit of just moving very quickly in the beginning.
I'm bad about that as well. Yeah.
And I just want people to be on guard, especially when it comes to someone who has more narcissistic behaviors than we would want them to. We can fall in love real quick, and we can get sexual with this person very quick. And the highs are so high, but then the lows are so low, aren't they? And one thing I wanted to say, which is a big red flag, is if you feel like they're pressuring you to skip steps, or they're pressuring you, especially sexually, that's a huge red flag. We don't ever want you. We don't ever want you to feel trapped,
or rushed.
Because especially when you're a people pleaser, You really want to please this person because you find a lot of your value and worth in how they feel loved or they pursue you, and that gets very dangerous very quickly, especially when it comes to giving ourselves sexually and just giving ourselves, all of ourselves, our energy, our time, our attention, our devotion. It's very quickly that we can find ourselves 3-4 months into a relationship and realize we're kind of stuck now because the person's really showing us who they actually are. And then we trick ourselves into thinking that, well, there were no red flags before, but it's like, well, okay, but
and we can tie that in with boundaries as well. You need to have good boundaries about the pacing of the relationship. That it's something that you feel good and comfortable
Nobody talks about that.
Nobody talks about that. It's not sexy. It's right.
No, it's
having comfortable, reasonable pacing is not the thing that they write love songs about for sure. But it definitely makes for a healthier setup than rushing in.
It's so true. The only other thing I was going to say is when it comes to, I think there's a red flag around unrealistic or unexpressed expectations. You're going to, on either side, whether, it doesn't have to be narcissism per se, but especially narcissists or people with narcissistic behaviors, they will hold you to a high standard and then they will demean you when you don't reach that standard, which you were never going to reach. You were never going to be good enough for them. And then they demean you and belittle you. But those were unrealistic expectations. So we need to know, or at least be able to decipher, I think my partner's holding me to some unrealistic expectations or standards.
And they may be unaware of that. I know myself and my partner, we have a lot of trouble with holding each other to standards that are probably we're not gonna. I was just telling Jimmy about this kind of thing the other day. I'm kind of sloppy in my household. I'm a little bit sloppy, and I know that my partner has big dreams about someday Ricky will be perfectly clean and neat as a pin. And I hate to say it, but I'm probably never gonna be the cleanest person that anybody knows. But I'm trying. So this is another one where I warn people against ascribing intent where there is none.
Yes.
My partner is not trying to hold me to the Mr. Clean standpoint so that he can say, look how far you've fallen below this. He's not doing that on purpose. He has ideas about how things should be, and he's understandably disappointed when I don't make it there. He needs to find respectful ways to bring that up and say that. But be careful trying to tell yourself that your partner is doing this to you on purpose when
that's so true.
They might be unaware.
And it all goes back to transparency. There's nothing holding you back to having a safe conversation about each other's standards and expectations for the relationship.
I love that.
That's possible. Now, if you tell me my partner can't do that, guess what? That's a red flag. I mean, so, and you know what? I couldn't do that before. I mean,
really?
I'm just saying we all struggle with having those tough conversations.
Yes.
We struggle with having tough conversations from a people pleaser standpoint because it's like, well, gosh, what if this leads to disconnection? Maybe I shouldn't even have this conversation. Right. But then the resentment always builds. We struggle on the opposite end. If you're avoidant attachment, you can't have tough conversations because of either, you're just completely ignorant that the tough conversation needs to happen in the first place. Right. Or you're terrified because it might shine you in a negative light. So you avoid that like the plague. Yeah. But the point is, I read a great quote the other day. I won't be able to pull it up now, but if you think having tough conversations is tough, wait till you see the result of not having them.
Yes. I love that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's so true. I mean, we forget that this is vital. It goes back to that first point I made, which is we all need to have the ability to talk vulnerably about our needs, wants, and desires and actually have a safe conversation where we can listen to understand each other.
Yeah. And
that's not optional. That's vital.
It's vital. And you can start that process in a relationship that doesn't have any vulnerability Be the first one to say, hey, I know we don't usually talk about this kind of stuff, but I've got some stuff that's really heavy on my soul here, and I want to let you in on it. And you might be really surprised at how well your partner receives that, seeing into your pain for maybe the first time.
Yeah. I tell people now that you should absolutely ruin a good moment. If you're having a good day with them, but like something's on your heart, like ruin that good moment and be like, hey, can we talk about something and us not have a fight about it? Can we talk about something? I'm going to talk about something and I really don't want you to feel attacked. I really don't want you to feel like I'm calling you, or I'm saying that you didn't do something right. I'm just trying to share something that's on my heart. Can we figure that out as a team?
Yeah.
And just see how they kind of navigate that. If you set a little bit of groundwork where it's like, can we both try not to get defensive? Can we both try not to get critical?
I love that.
Let's try to have that conversation.
Do you want to hear what Chris and I do on a good day? There's been no arguing, but we've got something heavy. I'll use internet safe language here. It's a poo sandwich is how we do that. And we like to say one thing that we absolutely love about our partner.
Yes.
And then in the middle, something that we're struggling with.
I've heard of this.
That they are doing. And then we close it off with another thing that we absolutely love about our partner. And it really softens the blow. I got to say, it does. It does. Because it's hard to just say, let's talk about your inability to put the toilet seat down and try to have a good day. But it's another thing entirely to say like, man, I so appreciated how you helped out with breakfast and you got all the kids ready for school this morning. That was so helpful. Also, let's talk about the toilet, right? But then, and then when it's all done, like you look super sexy today. Like it's much easier if you can. Throw some stuff
sounds juvenile at first. Like to somebody listening, they may be like, "Oh my gosh, do I really have to like baby them along?" But this isn't really. I see it as just a respectful way to like engage with another human. Like we're all sensitive to like what we would view as criticism. Like we're all that way.
And there's science here too. Hey, the Gottmans, right? Let's throw them back in too. Those negative and heavy conversations have a lot more weight, and it's kind of good to balance them out a little bit.
It's so true.
Because we hold on to the negative ones and criticism. But if you can throw some good stuff in there, man, I'm never going to feel bad about babying my partner a little. I want him to feel great. I do. And if that helps him put the toilet seat down more too, I'm all about that.
I love that. Yeah. So I really hope that this helped somebody.
I hope so too.
Yeah. I hope we talked about it in the beginning of the episode, but I just want to reiterate that we don't think that it's a great idea when people label their partners as narcissists. I don't like hearing it. I don't like when I hear, well, my partner's a narcissist. Well, are they diagnosed by a doctor or did you just diagnose them? Because like, it's not something that you should just, now you can say my partner has narcissistic behaviors or my partner has, that's perfectly fine. And we can go through how hurtful a lot of those are, but I just don't like it how it's become very mainstream as well. In my mind, like 70% of the population is narcissists. Like, you know what I mean? If you believed the internet, then 7 out of 10 people are narcissists.
Yeah, and let's throw it back to the narcissism continuum. Your own hosts here, Jimmy and I, are both rocking. I'm on the continuum. I am as well, and we are both rocking several narcissistic behaviors that our partners probably can't stand. So and you are too, listener. The chance that you have no narcissistic behavior in yourself is nil. It's not. That's not a thing. So
I guess all I'm saying is it's never a good idea to label our partners. No. That's all we're saying. That's all we're saying. We can talk about the behaviors and how destructive they are. Yes. That's a different subject.
Yeah, and if it's somebody that you love and you want to have a healthy relationship with, you should be talking about their behavior and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and labeling them as something that's pretty tough
that
to be in a relationship
really prove.
with.
Yeah. And it obviously starts the conversation on a wrong foot. Nobody likes to start a conversation with, so you're a narcissist, and let me tell you why. Let me tell you all the reasons why you suck as a partner.
I've gathered this internet evidence, and I would like to show you. Yeah.
No conversation has ever been helpful.
And also, are they going to go, wow, thank you for pointing that out.
No.
I am a narcissist, and I'm ready to change. They're never going to do that. That's not a thing.
Never. It's not a thing. You know what's so funny?
Yeah.
I know we're done with this, so we'll just count this as overtime. This is just a very, 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 very quick story.
Bonus,
I've gotten numerous messages from men, and they literally say that exact thing. They go, so my wife says I'm a narcissist, and I think I believe her. That's what they say.
Really?
And I usually write back immediately, and I say, you're not a narcissist, because no narcissist will ever admit that maybe they're flawed in any way, shape, or form. So I immediately comment and say, one, you're not a narcissist. Like, it's just funny. Like,
I love that.
So anyways, I hope that this has been helpful.
It has. Do you hear the end of the podcast is happening for me? I have guests at the door.
Fantastic. Well, good. We'll all let you go. Thank you so much for doing this.
But Jimmy, this was an important one, and I'm really glad that we could talk about this.
It was heavy. It was heavy. So thank you for anyone who survived with us.
Yeah.
We'll lighten it up next time.
Oh, let's have a fun one next time. Yeah. Okay.
I would love that. Cool. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.